Hello, everyone. Welcome to our chat on the future of game commerce. I'm Jibin. I'll be the moderator here. I'm on the engineering team at Stripe. My team is responsible for building all of the payments processing, backing the great announcement yesterday at the keynote. And I'm thrilled to be joined by this great panel today. So we'll start with some quick introductions. Sorry, it's our title slide, and that's me. JR, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'm JR. I'm the global product lead at Stripe, and I lead the managed payments product. And previous to that, I was the CEO and co-founder of LemonSqueezy.com, which is the easy button for companies to go global. So,
great. And Rambod?
Hi, folks. My name is Rambod. I lead up our LiveOps engineering team. We look after all our LiveOps tools, as well as in-app purchasing and all of our runtime data plays as well. Before that, ran mobile games for over a decade.
Great. And Claire?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Claire. I'm a senior product manager at Unity, product strategy architect now. Working on LiveOps, focusing on IAP and the content management solutions along with Rambod.
Great. And I'm going to put this down so I don't make the screen go black. So thank you for the introductions. And before we dive in, I want to set the stage here a little bit. The gaming industry, as many people in the room know, is bigger than ever. I think we're on track to process $188 billion in revenue as an industry this year, and driven by more than 3 billion players worldwide. So that's like 40% of the global population. And we're at an inflection point with commerce and gaming. The player expectations are evolving and are at a high level. In-game purchases have become the primary monetization lever. And App Store policies are changing very quickly and very dramatically. So just in the past month, Google changed their policy to allow Android apps selling digital goods in US so far to process in-app payments through third-party providers. So that gives developers and game developers a real choice today for the first time on how you should process your in-game commerce. But that comes with a new set of complexities. And we're going to talk about what all this means today for the next generation of games. So Rambod, let's start with you. Given your experience running a game studio before joining Unity, you have a unique perspective on this. So how has the landscape of game commerce evolved, and how do you expect it to go from here?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, right, it's such a weird time because at the same time, like, players are spending more, they're engaging more, yet, I mean, industry closures, layoffs, right? The industry is struggling, but ratings are at an all-time high. And discovery is becoming harder and harder, right? There's so much more content out there, and it's so hard to find the right players. The cost of user acquisition is increasing. So all these market factors are all happening at once in this like really just strange time to be in, which effectively means, if you have a successful game, right, live operations becomes even more critical than ever before, right? You're trying to continue that game running, trying to continue getting more players in, and trying to figure out how to monetize them. And I think what gets interesting is that introduces a lot of complexity into the ecosystem as well. And, this cross-platform complexity that comes with, where now you're across multiple storefronts, as stores continue to fragment and all this. And how do you run live service across all these sources? All these alternative payment methods are opening up. And, everyone's trying to figure it out as we go along. Oh.
Yeah, and Claire, from your product strategy perspective, how should studios adapt their monetization approaches with this change?
Yeah, we're seeing clear ways in how studios are approaching monetization across platform. 3 main ones gonna come to mind. So the first is targeting by player lifecycle. So you want to deliver the right offer to the right player at the right time. And this is like early in the game, you want to give them starter bundles and highlight them, whereas mid to late game, limited time events and currency packs become more relevant. Then the second is targeting our player behavior or their historical spend, so using that contextual information to inform what they're most likely to convert on, right? So, for example, me, when I'm playing Township, if I lose a level like 10 times, then I might buy a $2.99 power-up pack just to get me over that hurdle. Whereas, Rambod might be the type of guy that's happy to drop $99 if he knows it's going to get him to the top of the leaderboard.
I do love wailing out, so yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's kind of like acknowledging that one size doesn't fit all with, with this. And the third, and I think personally the one I found most interested, is the hybrid monetization strategy. So using ads and IAP and kind of having them reinforce each other. So like having a rewarded ad, giving you a video ad that gives you in-game resources as your reward, right? And this increases the likelihood of a player actually making a subsequent purchase and also creates this kind of like balanced and more profitable player experience. But at the heart of these three strategies is data. And when you start to take these approaches across platform and across stores, and now we're even talking about off-platform, right? It gets really difficult really quickly. So, besides wanting to give the Unity developers an easier time integrating with the providers, we also want to ensure that they have all their data accessible in one place and have the tools to be able to act on that data.
Yeah, and I think data is a really interesting point. We'll get to this more later, but I think with some of the new options, you get a lot more access to player data, which is really exciting. And that's a good transition to the payment side as well, where there's been a lot of changes recently. JR, you were a founder before joining Stripe. You ran the Lemon Squeezy. How are the recent changes in the payments landscape creating new options for developers?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe some context. So this might date me, but I've been selling digital products since 2007. So I've seen a few things. And there's a lot of pain that came from that, right? Like you learn about sales tax compliance, you learn about fraud, you learn about disputes and chargebacks and things that happen. And so that led me to create Lemon Squeezy, which was this word called merchant of record. A merchant of record takes on the responsibility of all these things. And so you're going to hear that term a few things. But really what that means is the app stores were essentially doing that for all these developers. And so now, creating that kind of functionality with Lemon Squeezy, I was acquired by Stripe about 1.5 years ago, and we've built managed payments to kind of serve that need. And then Apple had this big announcement, and so here we are with Unity, and that's what excites me the most. So we have this kind of payment background with Stripe, and then you have Unity with all the gaming experience, and so coming together, I think we're just going to be able to like serve a lot of users, and that's just like the most exciting thing for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Rambot, I think you have the also interesting background of running game studios for a long time. So with that in mind, how is this going to change things for developers?
Yeah, I mean, the economic transformation is going to be wild, right? I mean, back in the day, we had games that were kind of struggling, but a 20% extra margin, like that's the difference between a game that I would shut down to now a sustainable business and a viable game that I can continue running in live service. And, beyond the economics, it's also an interesting opportunity to kind of be able to actually engage your players and like have more control and more flexibility, right? I have more control over how I monetize my game and what types of things I show my players. I can react more quickly. I don't have to go through the whole App Store approval process every time I want to do these types of things. And then speed, right? Like the scale of these changes are happening so rapidly. Like I feel like I go to bed and I wake up and there's a new legislation, something new has changed. And this enables us to be able to react much more quickly as developers to the constantly changing landscape out from under our feet. And yeah, it's just all of that, like, while then managing all this complexity and everything just becomes so much more difficult, right?
Yeah, and you tee me up for a transition here. I think we talked a lot about how the unit economics can be way more promising, the data access, the relationships, the hybrid monetization models we can have, and it's a really exciting opportunity to capture. People are really excited about it. There's a lot of people in this room here to hear us talk about it. But the changes can also come with some pretty painful sticking points for developers if they're not careful addressing it. And I think, Rambot, again, from you, what are the challenges you're hearing from developers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a seasonal complexity, right? Like you're running a live event. How do you onboard your players into it? How do you target them? How do you make sure you're not accidentally doing like a Christmas event in the East where they don't necessarily celebrate that? And how do you kind of overlap those things? I still remember at one point we were running an event and all of a sudden there's Santa Claus riding a dragon through the main screen instead of a sleigh. Like you're juggling just so many things. And then there's all these platform inconsistencies. Like what does one storefront give you that others don't? And really being able to break free of those platform-specific tools and restrictions is such a strong enabler for being able to run a viable business. And then there's a technical debt, right? You're juggling multiple SDKs. I mean, that's the whole reason why we created Unity IAP to begin with, is so you don't have to have branching code paths, multiple SDKs. You're trying to update them, trying to change your integrations over time. And the more and more we can remove that tech debt, that also means teams can move much more quickly. And they don't have to deal with these types of things. And that's kind of the benefit of our abstraction layer. And then, when we talk about data fragmentation, not only now do I have to go through multiple places to understand just how much revenue I'm making, what all my sales channels are, But then let's not forget the cost of data normalization, right? Now everyone has their own data schemas. I have to normalize the data, clean the data, and then just to be able to make it joinable with the data I'm already having and generating from my game client. And that's part of the value that we can provide as well, is by kind of bringing that all and making it all feel consistent as part of one experience, rather than having to juggle all these things. And this is what we're hearing from studios, right? This is what we're hearing from all of you in the community, is this presents a massive opportunity, but also a lot of complexity, which is why we chose to do what we did, right? There's a lot of partners in this space, and we just didn't want to be yet another player and go like, oh, come use Unity's offering. But instead, let's just embrace the ecosystem, because fundamentally, we want to facilitate an open ecosystem. That's what all these rulings are about. And a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And that's really what we're here to facilitate. And that way you have the freedom to move between providers. You can find what works best for your game and your player, just like Claire mentioned, right? Some games and some genres might respond really, really well to a full web shop flow, where some games might not. And actually going through something like the Stripe integration, where you go straight to a checkout experience and players can use the same checkout flows that they're used to, might actually be what's best for your players. And we fundamentally want to give you the flexibility to find what works best for your game and your players in real time and be able to make those decisions so you can run a successful game.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting parallel on the payment side, where again, there's a lot of optionality. If you're choosing to leave these App Store rails, you can talk directly with a payment provider. You can go through one of these more fully featured solutions. JR, I guess, where have you seen developers get stuck when they try and leave the App Store rails?
I mean, it's uncharted territory, right? So it's just weird. It's just weird. I think a big thing is conversions at the front of mind. Every single conversation I've had has been just they're hyper conscious of conversion rate, right? Like you're in this native experience, and now you're going to ask someone to go to the web. How do we do this? The nice thing is we're starting to work with partners in other games and apps. We've seen. I was just talking to an app this week, and they were 36% natively with the App Store, and they're 33% on our solution, right? And so you take just like that's marginally different, but just like the cost savings that they're getting. So that's probably the biggest. So conversion, we're working on it at Stripe. We have full teams that are just dedicated to like checkout and the payment methods and the currencies and everything. And so I think that's exciting. Compliance is another one. So how do I do this? Sales tax compliance. I talk about sales tax compliance, but what is that, right? So we calculate it, we collect it, we remit all the taxes in all the jurisdictions, which is a really, really fun. There's
Sounds super easy.
yeah. And there's there's things like fraud. There's like fraud is like a bigger term, but there's friendly fraud. So the child buys the game, and now I got to deal with this chargeback, and how do I deal with that, right? And so when you're coming outside the walled garden of these app stores, it's just uncharted territory. And so I think that those are kind of the main things that I'm seeing. And I think all the work that we've been doing the last year and a half is we've kind of put a bow on that and hopefully had like a safe harbor for the studios to come and try this without feeling overwhelmed. It's exciting.
Yeah, and so you touched on conversions, and like it's so true, right? Because for example, like my grandmother plays Candy Crush. She probably spends $100 a month on it. She can barely get Face ID working, right? Like the double tap Face ID, very difficult. Like I still have to order her Amazon deliveries for her. Having someone like her go to a web store, create an account, link her account, go through all those flows, like she's never going to do that. Yeah. That's going to immediately turn her off and just terrify her. Where, for her, maybe there's a flow that works better, or even first-time purchasers, right? Maybe you want to lower that friction for that first-time purchase, put them on platform. But then if they start spending more, hey, now engage that direct relationship with them, where you can actually give them more rewards, give them discounts, things like that. Like, if I'm spending hundreds of dollars in a game, 10% discount, some extra rewards, a loyalty program, that will absolutely make me spend more and go jump through a couple of extra hoops in order to do that, right?
Yeah. Claire, how are the challenges affecting industry innovation?
Yeah, it's a massive drain on productivity and innovation in general. We hear from studios that they're spending between like 30 to 40% of their engineering resources just maintaining payment infrastructure, so fixing the pipes, right? Like when they could be delivering fresh content and building new features that their players want. And unfortunately for like smaller studios, it means they're having to make tough decisions about like which platforms and markets they can actually afford to support. I think in our latest report, it was like 40% of indies are affected by this and are having to limit their platform reach. So, this this fragmentation has a bunch of impact. Like experimentation is just really hard. So you want to run, you want to test new markets, A/B test things, or run price sensitivity, and it's just not easy to do with this fragmentation. So we want to give developers this time back, so you can focus on creating the great games that we all love to play, right? And then kind of rely on Unity and our payment partners to handle the infrastructure and compliance side of things.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the big changes we're seeing in the ecosystem, the massive opportunities that unlocks for developers and studios, the economics, the flexibility of the data, and the pain points that can come from this as well, the complexity of managing multiple integrations, or if you don't have 3 teams purely focused on optimizing web conversion, like that is also probably pretty hard. But let's talk a little about the solutions that we're seeing to solve those pain points and support developers through the change. Rambod, what is Unity's vision for simplifying the complexity here?
Yeah, one of the things that we kind of, like I mentioned earlier, when all these kind of things started opening up, we were trying to figure out what is Unity's role in this ecosystem, right? We could have gone out, again, with our own offering in this space, but in speaking to studios every day and really just embedding ourselves with both our customers as well as our internal publisher with Supersonic, what we realize is like that should just fundamentally not be our role, right? Unity has always been the assembly point for all these things. So we want to bring that same philosophy again to this. And I still remember when JR showed us the very first demo of Stripe, we're like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? Yeah. For my grandmother could actually do that, right? She would actually go through that flow. And that's kind of been our philosophy, right? Can we become that single integration point for all these other options? Because you probably want a mix of these fundamentally for your business, right? Like you even mentioned it, 30-30 split. Maybe that's what's best, right? And this way too, you get that one abstraction layer. So you get a C# layer, just like we wrap the native platform SDKs. That gives you one entry point. We standardize the webhooks on the back end, and then also standardize that data layer. And beyond that, we're thinking about also cross-platform capabilities. So now, you're working across multiple app stores, the web, PC, perhaps even consoles in the future, and that fragmentation just continues to increase. So how do we handle things like cross-platform entitlements, right? So if I buy something through Stripe or I buy something through the native stores, now I go on my computer, how do we make sure that you can get those purchases there without having to worry about the complexity of dealing with your own backend and all these other things as well? And then player segmentation, right? We talked a lot about how do you make sure that you get the right player with the right experience? But for us, how do we do that in a way where you can actually drop it into your existing live games, right? We didn't want this integration to be something that you look at and go, okay, well, I have to use this analytics platform and I have to use this backend. We really wanted to make it an open-ended way. So that way, we don't necessarily need to be the arbiter of who the player is. You can bring your own data either through our stateless segmentation system, where you just tell us some user attributes, and you can set up a rules-based logic there for determining, even down to the transaction level or the SKU, what provider should be shown, or just give us something like a target list into our backend that can plug into our stateful segmentation system that we can blend and mix in some of the data that we observe about players as well. And then platform agnosticism, right? We are not trying to replace the platforms. There is always a place for them. They're a great discovery mechanism. But at the same time, if you can escape that platform tax, why not, right? And it just helps you make more money. I mean, more margin is beneficial for everyone involved. And when you consider the $120 billion opportunity in front of everyone, imagine an extra 20% to that, right? That will just inject such a nice revenue stream into the industry as a whole.
Yeah. It's been really exciting to be here the past few days because I hear a lot about Unity playing a major role in abstracting away so much of this complexity for developers, for game developers. And it reminds me a lot of what I really love about Stripe, which is there's a lot of pretty terrible work that goes into actually making payments work effectively.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do at Stripe. We try and abstract away so much of the complexity for the people who use us.
It's like the ultimate unglamorous work.
Exactly. It's like we want the people using our tools to do the glamorous work that they love, so we can take all the grunt work in the background and make it easy and just work, right? JR, what is Stripe's vision for the future of game commerce, and what do we bring to the table here?
I think at the core, both Unity and Stripe, we're very much developer focused. And flexibility is a huge thing for us. So that's something we're going to continue to double down on. But I think immediately, I feel this sense of focus on conversion. It's very, very important that everything feels native. It's very important that the conversion rate is something that we're just hyper-focused on. yes, we have teams that are focused on the checkout and all these different things, but just in particular, this use case is very different and unique, and we need to treat it that way. So that's super important. I think obviously managed payments is extremely exciting, just because I think it's a great way for someone to jump into this place. So managed payments, the merchant of record offering, making that stronger, expanding everywhere we can. Like today it's global. And so how can we continue to make that better and better? What payment methods can we add? And just how can we make that experience even better? One like unique feature though of our system that I think is really, really nice, just back to the flexibility thing, is it works at the transaction level, which just to explain that. So a use case would be, you are a gaming studio that wants us to take care of all of the merchant of record experience just in the US, but the rest of the world, you would like to be the merchant of record. You have that flexibility. Or if you want to just be in Turkey and only sell in Turkey and let us handle the rest of the world, it's something that we can do. And I think that that's really, really amazing. So just continuing to kind of double into that like flexibility there.
Yeah.
And just to add on what you said about earlier in our shared vision, like it just made total sense, for us when the changes started to happen with the policies back in May. Like customers immediately reached out to us, like, okay, how do we get going on this, right? What's Unity doing about this? So they immediately looked to us to abstract this complexity. So like Robert mentioned, we knew we didn't want to be in the business of creating our own provider. We wanted to give our customers choice. So, when we started our search, we did want a partner that was developer first, just the same way we are. And Stripe was a clear choice for us. Like their platform is low code by design, so the cost to actually get started is next to nothing most of the time. And they support global payouts, which is great. And they're built to handle the scale that comes with Unity powering the majority of mobile games in the market. So, it was kind of a no-brainer for us.
Yeah. And I think we really saw that with the engineering partnerships as well in building this. It kind of, I see something in the audience. It felt like working on the same team. Like the culture was so similar, just solving these problems. That felt really great. So we've heard the future, the vision for the future. We can't see the future. We've heard the vision for the future from Stripe's perspective and Unity's perspective. But I want to take a minute to acknowledge what this partnership means for developers. We're really just getting started here. I know we had a roundtable yesterday as well, hearing from folks. So I guess, JR and Rabat, what are the early insights we're getting?
I think some of I'm just going to talk about stuff I'm seeing. So we had a game, MLB Clutch, that went live. I thought that was amazing, like what they're doing. They're automatically just doing cashbacks, incentives. They're leveraging all the discount and coupon things they can do to drive users to go outside the app stores. So I think like just the innovation that's already happening, I think is really, really exciting. Trying to think what else. There was also, what was the other thing?
People were really loving the direct relationship they get to have.
Oh yeah. Like we have Stripe has this, we call it metadata, but basically like it's just this way. We're now able to afford these new users like all this data they just couldn't see, right? Because you were in this walled garden of the app stores, you couldn't have access to a lot of this data. And at Stripe and Unity, we're able to kind of pass that back to you, and you can just make a lot of like really smart decisions based on data that I think is like a whole new world. And so I think the example I gave might sound kind of elementary, but like you couldn't do that previously. And so now it's going to be exciting to kind of see what happens from there.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, like that direct consumer relationship is so interesting, right? For us, for so long, like the vision of Unity was to democratize game development. And I think we can safely say we've done that, right? At this point now, it's how do we democratize successful businesses and how do we democratize success? And when you think about that, like having that direct relationship to your consumers can be huge. It lets you operate things like loyalty programs. And you can even reward people based on where they're purchasing because now you have that extra metadata of exactly where it's coming from. You can optimize that funnel even further and you can just continue to build that out. And that's one of the biggest successes that we do see studios run is really just encourage that direct relationship with your players where reward them for purchasing, reward them for certain patterns that you want to see coming back. Even things like daily rewards and unlocking those kind of continuous offers and those types of things. And all the way back to like fundamentally discounts, right? Like you're getting extra margin. You can actually give them, pass part of that discount back to the player, which then incentivizes them to go through these flows. And then they get used to it, right? Because we're all kind of in this together and figuring this out together. And we do see in some markets where the legislations have been like this for a while, people are more used to this, where in the West, in some areas, it's new. So over time, we expect that to kind of continue and players to get more accustomed to these alternative flows. And that friction will just go down and that conversion rate will continuously go up. And also the legislations are constantly changing, right? So one area today where you can't do this, literally tomorrow, we might be able to do it now. And it's, again, all about finding what works best for your players. So something that works best for one game and one studio might not translate one-to-one for you. So, look at what others are doing, take inspiration, and just try to iterate on that and put a unique spin on it that works well for your unique game design and what's unique to your own game.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Everything is so fast moving here. We're kind of figuring it out a little bit on the regulatory side day by day of what are the new opportunities, what can we address now? And it's been great getting to define so much of the solution space with Unity. The collaboration's been excellent. I think we're really excited to continue this going forward and solving real problems for game developers. So we're going to start wrapping up, but before we do that, I'd like to look at where game commerce is headed in a few years. JR, where do you see over the next few years this industry going?
Well, I think I said it earlier, it's uncharted territory. And I'm just a big believer in, well, one, I come from just leveling the playing field. So I just love, democratizing these fields, right? And I think opening that up for all of these studios, I think is really, really exciting for me because I just think more competition breeds innovation. There's going to be so many creative things that are going to be happening. I think for me, just to be able to kind of watch that unfold is going to be exciting. And so it'll be interesting to see how creative some of these studios get. So I'm most excited about that.
Yeah. And Rambo, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, right? We are firm believers in an open ecosystem. I mean, as you probably saw in the keynote, right? We're going to be bringing this integration to Unreal developers and to more places as well. Because fundamentally, when the industry thrives, everyone succeeds together, right? That's more revenue you can invest in user acquisition. It's more revenue you can invest in your next title, or just continuing to iterate on the content that you already have. And personally, I'm just genuinely very, very excited for these walled gardens to continue breaking down. So not everyone is subjected to the platform tax unless you want to be, because that's just an outdated policy that just doesn't scale anymore.
Yeah, and so thank you for that. We did save most of the time of the session for Q&A, so get some questions ready. Before we get there, I guess panelists, any words of wisdom for the crowd before we move to Q&A?
I'd say put your players first, right? Monetization isn't only about revenue. It's about creating these engaging experiences for your players, and that builds trust. So when you start to create value at the right time, this results in long-term success, both for your studio and for players. And also, just get out there, get started. You don't need to go 100% straight away. Pick a segment, pick a market, test 10% traffic, get confidence, and scale up. And just get started on the journey. See where it takes you.
And I would say, I just want to double down on what you said, right? Start small and iterate. Keep trying, because again, player habits change over time. So something that might not work today might work tomorrow. And you just have to find that right balance of what works best for your audience and your players, right? You know your game's better than anyone else, and you know your players better than everyone else. So just find that niche and just get that wedge in the door, because it will open up over time.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably just more of that founder mentality. It's get out there, get scrappy, test new things. And I do see a lot of hesitancy with a lot of these studios, and I understand it, but the ones that are actually leaning into it and trying new things and testing it, even if it is a small percentage or a different geo they want to go into, they're instantly seeing something, or they're learning something, and they're evolving and they're adapting, and then every day they're getting a little bit better. And so, I think my push would just be get out there, give it a try, even though it's a little unknown at the time.
Yeah, I love that. So major thank you for our panelists. Can we have a round of applause for the... Thank you.